This is Weather Scope.
Well, Paul, the timing could not be better.
That's true.
We have frost advisories out tonight, and tomorrow is the first day of autumn. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Perez. This is Paul Emick.
That's right, I am me, and you kind of had a cool Sunday in so many parts of the country. Might be a nice change. You drag the sweaters out, you know, kind of see what it's all about there with the cool weather. We'll talk more about the temps with Kim in a few moments, but let's talk about the wet weather, and primarily the rain that continues to stream into Texas. A very steady supply of the moist weather there. Sunday, kind of all wet for Houston. This is Sugar Land, southwest of the city, where umbrellas were getting a workout. Rain has continued throughout most of the day, and guess what? More of it has happened throughout the evening, and tonight, no exception, still more wet weather coming down around Houston. Let's talk a little bit about the happenings there, because you are seeing the wet weather, and it is a southwest soaker for sure. As we look at things in motion here, never mind. I guess my trigger finger isn't working on the old computer there real good. We'll go and take a look at the maps here and talk about the current. Oh, I'll show you exactly. I don't need this. I can show you exactly what's happening. Look at the current weather map. There's the front. There's an old front kind of hanging out here. Kind of a focusing mechanism, too. Kind of does aid in this. But the moisture supply is fairly steady. Moving into Texas. Still staying rather wet here. I'm going to prove it. Look at this. You can see a ton of moisture. You can kind of watch it moving into Texas. There it goes. And it's been very, very wet, especially in the Panhandle and parts of New Mexico. Now, in the upper air, westerly winds are kind of, the westerlies are moving in and kind of giving you a bit of a dry, kind of a dry situation there. So you're not seeing the showers in Arizona. Like Phoenix, you stayed very dry. A few sprinkles maybe around Tucson, but, you know, actually it's a lot drier in Arizona. Might get some wet weather later this week. We'll talk about the possibilities of that in a while. But showers? Yeah, and wet, it's going to stay that way. I'll break it down a bit, but first let's focus our attention here. Look at some of the showery weather in South Dakota and on into North Dakota tonight. Also, Sioux City, you've been seeing a fairly consistent amount of showers pushing there throughout the evening. Des Moines has been relatively rain-free, but you might get some more of this on toward the morning drive into work. And as all this moisture moves on toward Dubuque, for example, Chicagoland could see some clouds for most of the day. Could hold on to that. High pressure not enough to keep it totally away from you. So you might see a cloud or two. Maybe the commute on the Dan Ryan might not be with rain on it, but might see a few clouds kind of obscuring the view a bit. Nebraska, showers in Panhandle of Texas especially, and western Oklahoma. Just moving on. Even Lubbock staying rather stormy at times. Amarillo, more wet weather. Here's South Texas with, I talked about that moisture and the storms. Here, Corpus Christi, you've had a very consistent stormy night in that region as well. Let's look at the strong storm potential. Still South Texas, a risk of strong storms, and anywhere across the west. Could see the strong rumbles of thunder, including New Mexico, as I mentioned. There you see Arizona relatively dry. Albuquerque looks like you may get kind of brushed here with more of this. Denver has just had some scattered showers, been some heavier rains at times in portions of Utah throughout the day. That's where the upper level low continues to sit, but it's moving on northeastward. We'll show you what that'll mean to the forecast coming up in a few moments. Rainy travel, though, that's probably the rainiest spot with the flood potential. Dark green shading means that a flood watch is in effect there. Same situation here. Potential for flooding in South Texas, where the heavy rains have continued to come down. Only a few showers still expected, maybe into northern parts of Florida at times. Tallahassee, you've seen some showers, and also into South Georgia, even Albany could see some more wet stuff. Let's talk temps with Kim.
Thanks, Paul. Let's talk temps. Well, summer-like temperatures are holding on in some areas, but many of you already are feeling much cooler air now as we prepare for the official start of the fall season. Well, you still have flowers blooming in the mile-high city. And, well, with all the precipitation, you're probably going to have some more. We do see that a lot of moisture is still riding up over Colorado and into New Mexico. And not only is it bringing rain, but we are also seeing cooler temperatures. Now, check this out, 40s and 50s right now. It would probably be a little bit warmer if it wasn't for the cloud cover and the precipitation, because look, we're already in the 60s here in the Central Plains. We are modifying our air mass somewhat, but the Northeast, we're going to have another cool night tonight, and we do have some frost advisories. Now, we'll show you that map in a second. But look how far south our front has gotten here. That's right, almost to the coast. And we're already seeing a big change in temperatures from yesterday. Check this out. 20 degrees difference in Raleigh-Durham at this time, and cooling it off here in the Northeast. And temperatures today were about 10 degrees below average for many of the areas, and well below average definitely here in the Front Range. Very cool in Denver today. As a matter of fact, we had a record low this morning in Sioux City, Iowa, 32 degrees, right at that freezing mark. Right now, well, your actual high, we'll get to those current temps in a second, 68 in Des Moines, Grand Island at 54 right now, Denver holding at 60 with the cloud cover and a few showers around. And we actually had a record high. See how warm it was south of the front? You bet. Tallahassee, 99 degrees. That tied the record. Currently across Florida, still pretty mild. You can see where the front is going through. Temperatures are really starting to drop in Little Rock and also in Atlanta. 54 in Cincinnati, 54 in Chicagoland. And check out the 39 in Caribou. So what do you think? Hey, well, probably some frost, possibly for the Northeast tonight. Almost all of New York, Vermont, and hopefully you'll get a chance maybe this weekend to get some of the fall colors. Bright maples are really popular right now. If you're going to hit the Robert Frost Trail in Vermont, it's going to be beautiful. Well, hopefully you get a chance today. Next weekend, you'll have to stay tuned for a 5-day planner for that one. Even Eastern Ohio, even Cleveland, folks, it's going to be a nippy one tonight, so watch out for that frost. And you know what? We have the forecast for you. We're going to let you know exactly how cold it's going to get. Here's Paul.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening with the Southwest. Kim, you fixed it. Thank you very much. Let's show you what's happening here. Low-level moisture continues to flow right on in. It's a deep, deep tropical batch of moisture moving in as well. Now, lifting up over the mountains, called orographic effect, or cooling with height, helps to enhance some of the rainfall, highest elevations. Plus, upper-level low, you need moisture, you need lift, you need instability. We've shown you all three things. That's the mixings. And with all that happening, we could have the chance of some flash flooding, especially portions of New Mexico and South Texas. It's just going to stay wet as long as that deep tropical moisture flow moves in. It's entrained, it's called, moving in there. It's going to keep you with all the wet weather. Let's look at the morning map and prove it. Still in South Texas, you can still see some showers holding on here and just continues to chug right on in. And also upper level low continues to drag it in. Winds blow from high to low. Low pressure, kind of a vacuum, moves this way and pulls moisture in. It's going to stay nice to northeast New York City. Great drive. You're coming in on 95 around Stanford into around White Plains. A nice day. Nice for D.C. too. Chicago, just some clouds, but the wet weather stays here throughout the day. Midday, still rather wet. Lubbock, Amarillo, more showers and eventually drag some clouds. Maybe wet weather toward Kansas City and eventually might bring that on to Chicago. And not out of the question. Wet weather, where you see the darkest green shading, indicates where we'll see most of the wet weather, including portions of Texas and New Mexico, of course. Low temperatures overnight, a little bit cool in some spots, as we've been talking about quite a bit. And also a lot of heat holding on in only a couple of spots of the country, most everybody cooling down.
That's right. And lots of rain in the forecast for Texas, so be careful out there tonight.
That's right. We'll talk about that next on TravelWise after your local forecast.
on WeatherScope Autumn.
The Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
This tropical update is sponsored by the Home Depot, where low prices are just the beginning.
Well, it's time for that tropical update, as it is 10 minutes before the top of the hour every day. And we do have a hurricane to talk about, and one that is going to affect the lower 48 states, probably in one way or the other. Right now, it looks like a moisture feed. That's what's occurring now from Nora, and we may have more of that for Arizona and New Mexico later in the week. This is Hurricane Nora. This is Socorro Island, right in the path of Hurricane Nora, and Nora is a Category 3 hurricane. Nora is centered at 18.2 north and 110.8 west. It's just south of the Socorro Island. Its winds 125 miles per hour, moving northwest at 9 miles per hour. Central pressure 28.05 inches, 950 millibars. It has strengthened, has a nice concentric eye, and it is moving northwest. Now, it's forecast to take a turn. It's going to move northwest for another 24 hours, and then it's due to take a northerly track. We have a trough, a big trough that's moving down south off the west coast, and that should pick it up and begin to move it more northerly. In 72 hours, Thursday morning, I think about 2 o'clock, the forecast track has it somewhere around the central Baja of California. Until then, though, we have hurricane warnings that are in effect for Socorro Island and the island to the west. Looks like it'll move right over Socorro Island today. There are coastal flood warnings in effect for Cabo Corrientes and Punta Maldonado, all because of Hurricane Nora. Now, some of the rain bands, most of the rain bands actually, as we've been watching Nora, have been off the coast. Heavy rain off the coast of Mexico. There have still been large swells generated by Nora, and that's the reason for the coastal flood warnings. But the heavy rain that can cause the floods and the mudslides along the coastal terrain, mostly mountainous, has at least been less than what it could be if this were just a little bit closer. Now, the tropical storm force winds extend out about 200 miles, hurricane force winds about 85 miles. And again, Nora headed to the northwest now and then to the north, and looks like it'll be over the center part of the Baja Peninsula in about 72 hours. You can just barely make out the trough, actually, because of this blackout due to the eclipse. The satellite out here in the west doesn't get part of that image. It's shadowed, but you can see Nora here, and then if you look close, you can see that there is a trough that has dug down in the south, or in the southwest, and that should pick Nora up and begin to divert a little more to the north. Now, the water vapor imagery in the east shows an upper level low in the western Gulf of Mexico. We also have a low pressure and upper level low north of Cuba over the Bahamas. They've been the reason for persistent showers and thunderstorms. We also have a wave that has moved over the Lesser Antilles and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. It's caused about an inch, inch and a half of rain to fall over Puerto Rico, and it's interacting with an upper level low, and we've got a lot of showers and thunderstorms. This does not look like it's going to develop into a tropical storm in the near future, nor is this upper level low in the Gulf of Mexico. But we're going to watch that closely, because just to its south looks like we might have another surface low pressure, and if that over time sits around underneath high pressure in the upper levels of the atmosphere, could be some development. Out in the central Atlantic, we have an impressive wave that's holding together pretty well, but look at the westerlies here. They're very, very strong, and these are what have prevented these waves to further develop. So tropical storm formation not likely, but certainly that bears watching. Off the coast of Africa, nothing new to report here. And out in the western Pacific, we have Tropical Storm Ella right here. Tropical Storm Ella is probably going to be diverted back out to sea and not a threat to land area.
Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
Time now for your tropical update, and here are the latest coordinates on Hurricane Nora, 18.7 north, 111.4 west, and that is about 305 miles to the south-southwest now of the very southern tip of Baja California. Sirocco Island was earlier in the northern portion of this eye, now passing through the eye, and the stronger winds and the heavier rain on the southern portion of this storm are now going to be passing over the island. So there are hurricane warnings in effect for those islands. And the winds now at 125 miles an hour. Movement continues to the northwest at 9 miles an hour. Again, hurricane warnings in effect, as we do expect hurricane conditions for Sirocco Island and also the islands to the west. We also have coastal flood warnings, as we do expect those large swells and the very high waves to come crashing on shore, so that could also be causing some problems. Now here's a look at Hurricane Nora, showing a few weaker signs here on the northern fringe, but very powerful winds and also a lot of convection here on the southern half. We are forecasting, the National Hurricane Center forecasting Nora to continue to the northwest over the next 24 to 36 hours, then gradually take a more northerly turn and end up over Baja California and the southern tip of that within the next 72 hours, with winds down below 100 miles an hour. The reason why Nora is expected to do that is because of a trough that is sinking on down to the south, expecting Nora to get caught up in that and head a little bit more to the north, providing more moisture to the southwest and also for Texas as we head closer to the weekend. So we will be watching Nora very closely, not so much for strong wind damage to the United States, but all that moisture coming into areas that are already getting quite saturated today. Here's a look at the Gulf of Mexico, and this is what I'm talking about. We have a trough that is sitting off the coast, and that is pumping in a lot of moisture into the coastline for Houston, Galveston, and also Corpus Christi, at times rating at the rate of 2 inches an hour. We're not looking for signs of any tropical development here at this time, just kind of a trough of low pressure and plenty of tropical moisture associated with that. We had one tropical wave that passed over Puerto Rico yesterday, bringing some rain, now just a few gusty winds and the possibility of some thunderstorms there later on today. That wave is interacting with an area of low pressure in the upper levels of the atmosphere and now bringing kind of some squally weather, some thunderstorms to Hispaniola and also the Dominican Republic. Now this large area here, a tropical disturbance that is encountering some fairly strong westerly winds, and that is going to at least inhibit development in the near future. Also, you can note here on our water vapor imagery loop a rather large trough that is heading on down to the south, and that also is kind of shearing that apart. So this one is going to have a hard time developing anytime soon. Also still watching Tropical Storm Ella here with maximum sustained winds at 50 miles an hour. Forecast to continue to move to the north and then eventually to the northeast and away from any land mass. Here's the rain.
Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
We'll begin with powerful Hurricane Nora off the west coast of Mexico. Not quite as strong as it was, but still strong enough. Top winds 120 miles an hour. It is moving now toward the northwest at 8 miles an hour. That little dot right there, that's the Coral Island. The eye was over that for quite some time. We think this is going to continue to move northwest tonight and possibly into tomorrow, and then begin to turn a little bit toward the north. And we think it's going to be up there pretty close to somewhere on the coast of Baja California. Certainly by Wednesday. Right now it looks as if it might go a little bit west of the southern tip. We don't know that for sure. But nevertheless, we have out hurricane warnings for Socorro Islands and for Revilla Hidalgo out here, these islands, and those are hurricane warnings. We know that on Socorro they've had hurricane winds, but we don't know how strong they were exactly because we didn't get any reports there. And from Mazatlan down to Punta Estrella, we have out coastal flood warnings. That's for abnormally high tides that are being generated by this hurricane. It's got rather a large eye there, as you can see, and you can see some movement now towards the northwest, certainly, but not very fast. We're beginning to get rain up at Cabo San Lucas. We can see some of that on the radar out of Cabo San Lucas right now. Now, looking at a infrared picture, we can see these deep reds beginning to wind almost all the way around the eye now. Not quite. Should they get all the way around, we think that this hurricane might get even stronger. Again, 120 miles an hour. There's the tip of Baja California, moving toward the northwest at 8 miles an hour. We thought you might like to see something on the temperature anomalies. These are the deviations from normal. This bright red you see down here on the equator, that's this several degrees above normal associated with the El Nino. You can see above normal temperatures off the west coast, but notice this trail of blue there indicating a little bit below normal. That's exactly the path that was traversed by Linda, and now with Nora up in the same area. And when you get a hurricane hanging over the same area for a while, you get upwelling and a little cooling, and we're able to sort of trace the paths of those two by looking at temperatures a little bit below normal. Now we'll show you the vapor here and what we think is going to change the course of this a little bit. Notice the trough of low pressure. That's what we call digging down, getting in closer to where the hurricane actually is. And again, we expect the northwest movement to continue tonight, but then turn a little bit more towards the north. So much for the Pacific Office.
Time now for our tropical update, which is sponsored by Honda Generators. Power when you need it. Well, we've been watching very closely the goings-on in the eastern Pacific. Hurricane Nora, now centered at 19.6 north, 112.5 west. That puts the center about 285 miles south-southwest of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Maximum sustained winds are now down to 115. They were at 120 earlier this evening. Now they're down to 115. Moving now to the northwest at 8 miles per hour. The pressure now 960 millibars. And we have some watches and warnings to tell you about right now. Hurricane warnings continue for Socorro Island and Revillagigedo Islands. Also to the north, we've got a hurricane watch in effect from Punta Eugenia southward to 25 north, and then south of there in the area in orange, tropical storm warnings in effect here for the Baja. So we again have some new watches and warnings to tell you about. Certainly all interests in the Baja want to keep a close eye on this, and also in the southwestern U.S., because there is the potential that as we head through time, we could be dealing with some of the effects. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Also want to tell you about some coastal flood warning from Mazatlan to Punta Estrecho. So with the strong waves and the high waves that have been battering the coastline, those coastal flood warnings continue. And we have had reports of problems here because of the high waves. 20-foot waves have been reported. So again, there's a lot going on here still as Nora continues to move off to the northwest, although we do think that it is expected to make a turn more towards the north and head in a more northerly direction. But again, there have been some problems, some damage reported in Jalisco and Guerrero states, homes damaged, restaurants damaged because of the high waves and the coastal problems here. We've also had reports of high wind and heavy rain around Cabo San Lucas, and some flooding reported there, as well as some of those rain bands make their way into this area. So again, we're continuing to watch Nora very closely, not expecting it again to decrease, at least not in the immediate future. Again, it is down to 115 miles per hour, the maximum sustained winds, but we don't think it's, at least in the immediate future, going to decrease too much more than that. We'll, of course, have to keep an eye on it, but we do think that it is going to take a turn more toward the north because of this trough here. That is expected to pull it more in a northerly direction. So the Baja, again, all interest here, want to keep an eye on it, and eventually we may see some of that moisture making its way into the southwestern U.S. So this is something we'll have to watch very closely. There's still a lot of questions and still a bit of uncertainty. Just suffice it to say that you need to stay tuned to the Weather Channel. We'll keep you updated, but we may be dealing with the potential for some heavy rain in the southwest. Just stay with us.